So today I saw an article on Twitter titled The Best Sci-Fi and Fantasy Books of 2024 by Polygon, which is a website that normally does video game related content, but I figured I would check it out and see what it was all about. They say distant worlds, nearby horrors, and everything in between. Now, full disclosure, I took a sneak peek at this list and I haven't read a single book on it. To be fair, I've been trying to kind of tackle the classics that I sort of missed during my little reading hiatus. So I haven't read a ton of super contemporary books of late. So for me, this is, I think, less going to be about, do I think these books deserve to be on this list, and more about, should I read these books? Because my TBR is already quite long, but I'm legitimately curious to see if there's any here that sort of really pique my interest. I just took a look at the covers to start things off, but I haven't taken a look through them. And for you at home, maybe this is an opportunity to check out some books that you may have missed, or if you have read them and you think that I should as well, definitely leave a comment down below, because I'm kind of curious at a glance to see what some of these are. So let's get this started. Sort of the preface here, wonderfully human is a term that they use, and they sort of go through a little bit romantasy, gothic horror, and a retelling of classic myths. So already off the bat, a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but we'll see how this goes. Now, this first book I absolutely have heard of, which is How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. Really fun cover, giving, and sort of like probably making nods to lit RPG or progression fantasy, which I know is a big thing that's out right now. I guess this is about a character who's stuck in a time loop. Comedy movies, action, horror, first discovering they're in a time loop and feeling like they're a waste of space. One that feels the idea interesting. How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying. When Davies accidentally came from a mundane world to a magical one. Isekai. Okay, so it is an isekai style. Interesting. Declared the chosen one, joined the forces of humanity against the beast people and orcs of the wilds, and the Dark Lord leading them. Eventually she failed to save the world and died, and then she woke up again at the beginning of the loop. Interesting. So honestly, again, I mean, so isekai sort of being reborn in another world, this style, but also with a time loop element. And I guess sort of the idea of sort of taking on that additional challenge, not only to be the good guy, but also maybe the bad guy, or I'm sure it's going to be a sort of a, usurping of those expected tropes. I'm someone who candidly has enjoyed the odd isekai anime, but I'm not someone who's read really any lit RPG or progression. It's on my list. It's one of these things. It actually has been on my list to read something that's more like this. And I'm wondering if this is kind of in that style. So far, piquing my interest. Good job, Polygon, already. The next one is Woodworm by Leila Martinez. With 149 spare furious pages, Leila Martinez builds a haunted house. Within it, an old woman and her granddaughter live at the edge of town, sharing space with shadows and rage. A boy disappears. Suspicion makes the locals once again consider the woman they've neglected, causing them to knock on their door. The shadows and saints that roam the dark halls and come out to play in generations of injustice and class warfare come roaring to the present. Interesting. Okay. Cover is interesting as well. This isn't, again, probably not one that I would naturally lean towards, but I mean, 149 pages, that almost sounds like it's more novella in length. So that could be interesting. Okay. Probably not catching my attention. Again, I'm more of a traditional, like classic sci-fi and fantasy person. So interesting. Already, I love the cover of this next one. I'm getting, I don't know, I kind of Hitchhiker's Guide, kind of off the bat. All right. The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. I'm friends with this one couple. He likes books about explorers. She likes stories about complicated women who maybe sometimes get down with the hot guy. When the Ministry of Time is released, I told them it's like a character from one of his books fell into one of her books. Interesting. Genre skipping. Oh, a time travel experiment conducted by the British. Oh, interesting. An unnamed protagonist. Instead, her job is to host Lieutenant Graham Gore, a Victorian polar explorer plucked from certain death and brought to the present. Deadpan wit and brisk prose. Huh. So it's a rom-com. Okay. Not gonna lie, I would almost never pick up a rom-com, like a traditional romance comedy, but that's interesting, especially with an unnamed protagonist. How is that written? I would be curious even just to read an excerpt from this one and see if I like the writing style, because I'm already getting Hitchhiker's vibes from this. So, interesting. Okay. Again, another one whose cover I'm finding very interesting. God, I'm getting like Dante's Inferno all those old paintings vibe from this. The Physics of Sorrow by Georgi, oh dear, Gospodinov? Translated by Angela Riddell. Okay. Oh, a young man named Georgie. Wait, the same name as the author? That's interesting. Strange diagnosis. Obsessive empathetic somatic syndrome. He falls in the cracks of other people's stories, supplementing himself in the existence of others. It's a rather direct metaphor for the writer's mind. Bulgarian author Georgi Gospodinov? Yeah. Fragmented tale about a writer shares his name, who slips into the stories of ancestors and myths. I'm already getting Stephen King in the Dark Tower vibes from this. I don't know, could be kind of interesting, but not immediately capturing me off the bat from this one. Okay. Someone you can build a nest in by John Wiswell. So it was actually this author retweeting this article, who was then retweeted by a publishing company that I follow on Twitter. It's how I saw this in the first place. So this one's interesting because it's a debut novel after a series of intriguing shorts. So that's, I mean, already I'm more inclined to want to support like a debut author. So it's a fantasy spin on Martha Wells' Murderbot books. So candidly, I haven't read Murderbot yet, partially because they're priced at like $18 a piece at Barnes & Noble, which for like a 175-page book is ridiculous. So maybe at some point I'll grab the ebooks, but it has been on my list, but I haven't read them yet. Main character is a powerful protoplasmic goo monster in a medieval-ish society instead of a cyborg space. Cozy asexual romance. Point of view character, a human-devouring creature named Sheshishin makes meaningful contact with a monster hunter and starts learning. Well, again, maybe it's just because I had watched that time I got reincarnated as a slime, as like Isekai. I'm already getting sort of vibes from that, but it doesn't seem like it is that same sort of Isekai style. Huh. For emotionally satisfying readers. So this kind of seems like it's maybe like a cozy fantasy-esque with more humor. Interesting. Okay. You know what? I would maybe check this out. I'm kind of intrigued. I mean, again, a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but I am more and more trying to stay. Again, I'm more of like a traditional like space opera or epic high fantasy person, and I'm trying to expand my horizons. So I could see this potentially being interesting just because it's, again, I feel like it sort of borders on a lot of things that I'd enjoy. Interesting. Okay. The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello. Short, powerful read, identity, prejudice, revenge, and monster sex. Gotcha. Okay. Trans frontier nurse Leslie is assigned to a remote Appalachian town. Appalachian? I should say it right. His attempts to administer vaccines are immediately buffed by hostile religious citizens. Interesting. Okay. I mean, kind of lost me at monster sex. I'm gonna lie. Again, I'm getting more familiar. Maybe that's too far into the deep end for my learning more. I mean, I did read Fourth Wing, so I'm getting, there are monsters in set, but like dragons, but not together. So give me time, internet. Antibot by Sierra Greer. I guess didactic derivative DNF or an instant favorite. Given its place on the list, I think the answer is clear. Okay. Antibot. Interesting title. I'm getting like Black Mirror meets Barbie vibes. Okay. Top of the line sex robot devoted to being perfect girlfriend to divorcee Doug. He prides himself on being a benevolent owner and praises how human she seems. But as Annie begins to develop true sentience, he grows increasingly frustrated and controlling. Annie struggles to reconcile her guilt and pain over displeasing Doug with her own wants and needs, feeling she's discovering for the first time. Greer does an incredible job allowing Annie's journey for self-fulfillment to live alongside her endearing desire to please Doug, even as it becomes more and more abusive. Interesting. It isn't. I mean, I don't think I was wrong. It quite literally. Wow, good job, me. Actually, good job, cover artist, because it is kind of Barbie meets Black Mirror. Huh. Again, probably not one I'd read, but I don't know. If anyone's read this one in the comments, I'd be curious to read a review of this, if I'm being honest, because it's super interesting concept. Like this, that's a concept of a book that is entirely dependent on the writer and the writing. It is entirely dependent on that. So. Okay. Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. Oh, again, man, the covers. Authors, if you're an aspiring author, cover art is just so incredibly important. I mean, every single one of these books has had stellar covers. So, number one international bestseller, author of Godkiller. I'm not familiar with Hannah Kaner. Interesting, but it's a sequel. Okay, so I think it's the first sequel we've seen on this. A lot of like shorter books, novellas, and standalones so far. So this is interesting. Explain the gods are in this setting. whole subclass people dedicated to killing them, and then build an emotionally fulfilling narrative within that framework. Instead, it brings back the same characters to face an escalated threat. Okay. Again, obviously not going to just jump into book 2. I'm kind of surprised they recommended a book 2. I mean, I get that it's part of what... I mean, maybe I'm not, because again, it's new books, it's first half of 2024. That makes sense. Thornier, more complicated book than Godkiller. Maybe I'd look up Godkiller. I mean, it seems kind of interesting. Again, I don't think this particular synopsis does a very good job of selling this, though, I'll be honest. So yeah. So this next book I recognize because my girlfriend bought it and it's over there. I'm not going to go around and grab it because it's like under a bunch of other books, but it has the sprayed edges and she was very keen on that. So maybe I'll read this one just because we have it at home already. Again, this seems like it's a very traditional romantasy, but it's Norse inspired, which I'm a big fan of. Not obviously, you guys wouldn't know that. I am a big fan of like Norse. I grew up, reading stories of Norse mythology and that kind of stuff. So interesting. For years, power-hungry men have searched for the blessed shield maiden who was prophesied to unite Scotland while they are going. This author's going hard with the leaning heavily into the playing on Norse terms. Under who controls her fate. Because of this, the headstrong Freya, kept her powers secret all her life, even going along with her family's wishes to become a wife rather than pursuing her own dreams of battlefield glory. When her hidden blood abilities are unintentionally exposed, Freya finds herself forcibly oathbound to an ambitious jarl and thrust into a dangerous political game that tests her cunning strength and how much she's willing to sacrifice for what she's told is the greater good. Of course, spicy forbidden romance, the brooding tattooed son. I mean, if I was gonna read a romantasy, that doesn't sound terrible. So, who knows? Maybe this could be one. If my girlfriend gets around to reading it, could be one of those on the reading her favorite books series. Which, if you haven't checked out, that's why I read Fourth Wing. The Other Valley by Scott Alexander Howard. Again, sick covers. Not a barn burner. It's a time travel adventure, a wistful novel of quiet devastation and philosophical uncertainties that'll give you a bad case of heartache. Oh dear. Oh God, I'm getting immediate. What's that one? It's a movie. Oh crap. It's Bill Nighy plays the dad, and the son can time travel, and he turns. I think Rachel McAdams is the other star in it. Someone will tell me in the comments. I'm getting vibes of that because that one is heartbreaking. Anyway, 16-year-old Odile lives in a valley town of where one were to walk east, they arrive at the same town 20 years in the future. Walking west, they'd find the same town 20 years in the past. Pattern repeats itself across infinite towns in both directions, with trips between valleys rigorously governed by the council's local officials who evaluate citizens' requests, like a parent's wish to see a dying child who has since passed. Interesting. Observe their son, something terrible about to happen, torn between the strict rules against her and to save the boy she's begun to fall for. Oh, so it's also kind of giving like The Giver kind of vibes, just sort of, how the society is built and if the rules are correct. Oh man, that was definitely a really formative book that I read. I know it's a very divisive book, but I read it when I was in grade school. Interesting. I would maybe read this one again, a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but if a time travel story is done well, I'm really into it. And a great title, An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. Ooh. Sapphic, Gothic, Vampire, Dark Academia. These are not AoE 3 tags with description. Okay. Probably not for me off the bat, but I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy this book. Of course, it's another retelling. Okay. Carmilla. Okay. All right. Okay. Probably not for me. And the last one, The Fox Wife. I've seen people talk about this book. This is The Fox Wife by Yangzi Chu. Oh, I'm gonna butcher that. Okay. Fans of Kids John. What is with everybody having not the easiest names for me to pronounce today? Key Johnson's. The Foxwoman's similar take about Kitsune, which is just Japanese for fox. Like-minded folkloric tricksters shouldn't miss Foxwife. For fans of Netflix's animated series Blue-Eyed Samurai, which was I think a queer romance but done in like a Chinese style on Netflix, if I have the right show. People in my writing Discord rave about it, so there it is. Revenge journey, strong personalities and points of view, and narrative split between contemporary characters chasing down different goals. Fox is the title. Is Asan or Snow, who shifts between human and animal forms. Okay, so it's just a classic shifter novel in 1908 Manchuria, but like set in like a real Interesting time period. So it kind of seems like it takes maybe some of the stories and tropes that like maybe a younger audience would like and sort of puts them in the framing of like a more adult story. Agent Detective Bao with supernatural gift for detecting lies, takes on a cause. Identifying a woman found in the snow under serious circumstances such as the fox's involvement. Interesting. Oh, so with time jumps as well. Interesting. I don't think it's probably one for me. I like mysteries all right. I think, but I usually like them. Again, I just recently did I usually like them when they're wrapped sort of in a genre that maybe I'm more attached to. Like I just read Neon Ghosts, the first one. I just did a review on it, and I really, really liked it. It was kind of more of these mysteries, but in a cyberpunk shell. Yeah, maybe. Just, yeah, these sort of classic retellings are just so popular right now. So, yeah, honestly, there are a few on this list that I would definitely, I mean, a couple for sure that I think I'd check out. Honestly, the first one, How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying, is probably the one that jumped out to me the most. I think it's probably the most in my wheelhouse. But the Ministry of Time also does seem interesting, and someone you can build a nest in. I think if there are a couple of these, and then maybe a Fadington Blood if I was going to lean in. Or the other, honestly, like, again, all books that aren't, they say sci-fi and fantasy is sort of the top books. And I think if you are someone who's a fan, like myself, of more traditional sci-fi and fantasy, and you go to places like the fantasy subreddit, which is very male dominated and very skewed and not representative of the broader reading market, these books might be kind of surprising, and also not really feeling like, you know, like, where's the, you know, Tchaikovsky, where's the whatever, or another one of these authors that's, I don't know, released, I guess, more like traditional science fiction or high fantasy in the last year. I don't know. Yeah, again, I think I love seeing these lists. I love seeing what other people in the space are finding and enjoying, what's popular. I love seeing, you know, different people's opinions on this. Have you read any of these books? If so, or were they worth reading? Should I check them out? And if not, which books jumped out to you? Are there any books you're going to pick up off this list? I would love to hear it. I'm really curious. Again, if you guys like the video, I've got another one coming out in a couple of days. A lot more coming out on the channel in the next little bit. So if you want to subscribe, you want to see more content, be sure to do so. Drop a like. Always appreciated. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.